on December 31st, 2020. District 1 Council Member Roland Winters was elected to council in August 2013. He was re-elected to council in November 2018. His four-year term began on January 1st, 2019, and expires December 31st, 2022. District 2 Council Member Nancy Hayden was appointed to council in February 2018 and was elected to council in August 2018. Her two-year term began on January 1st, 2019, and expires December 31st, 2020. District 3 Councilmember Patrick Duffy was appointed to council in September 2017. He was elected to council in August 2018. His two-year term began on January 1st, 2019, and expires December 31st, 2020. District 4 Councilmember Ken Remley was elected to council in August 2016. His four-year term began on January 1st, 2017, and expires December 31st, 2020. District 5 Councilmember David Sanders was appointed to council in January 2019. The term expiration for the District 5 appointment is December 31st, 2020, and the remainder of the four-year term will be placed on the next scheduled council election in August 2020 per state law. District 6 Councilmember Chris Judd was elected to council in August 2018. His four-year term began on January 1st, 2019, and expires on December 31st, 2022.
I want to call this regular work session of February 5th to order. Can I have a roll call, please?
Yes, Mayor Hall.
Here.
Vice Mayor Winters.
Here.
Councilmember Duffy.
Here.
Councilmember Sanders.
Here.
Councilmember Judd.
Here.
Councilmember Hayden. Here. Councilmember Remley.
Here.
Thank you.
You all join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we have one item on the workshop. Could you?
Two items.
Two items.
So yes.
Two items, yes.
That first item is presentation and discussion pertaining to the city's development impact fees.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mayor, members of council. I'm here today with Ben Griffin. He's with our consulting firm, Tischler Bice. So he's the one who put together the 105-page document that you've seen posted on the website and attached to this agenda. So what our hopes are is to summarize the 105-page document for you in this work session and be able to answer any questions that you have. Unless you guys have already read it, we can try to at least clarify all of those things for you. So we are here today to talk about the development impact fees. So we're going to go over the purpose of the development impact fees, the fee adoption process, the development projections that we have. The proposed development impact fees is really what Ben's going to talk about the most, our fee summary, and then the next steps in this process. So this has been a very long process, about 18 months, So we start with, we hire a consultant, we get all the directors together, we work on our capital plan, they work with the developer and the directors, and we talk to all of the communities or all the community stakeholders. So it's a very long, lengthy process that brings us to this point. So we have a lot of stakeholders and we have a lot of support back here. I was just the project manager of this project. So if we have specific questions, I'm sure I can get that person to answer those questions, or Ben and I will do the best we can to answer those for you. So just to start with the basics, what is an impact fee? An impact fee is a one-time charge that we collect at the time of development. So when somebody pulls a permit, we collect impact fees. So those are one-time in nature, and they're very restrictive on what we can and cannot use them for. So if we didn't have development impact fees, the other sources we would have come pay for these would be the general fund, we would pay debt with these, or we would have development agreements pay with these. So the whole concept is growth pays for growth. So if a development comes in and they are going to impact the city, with every new housing unit comes new police officers, comes new firefighters, comes new parks. The idea between a development impact fee is that growth pays for itself. So growth is restricted, and these funds are restricted. They cannot pay for people. They can only pay for infrastructure. So they're one time in nature, and people are ongoing costs. So we wouldn't be able to use impact fees for police officers or for park staff. So they're only to build an actual structure. Within these are also limited with per state statute. So we can only build a park up to 25 acres. We couldn't build the community park that we have next to us on impact fees because that's too large. So that's more of a regional park. But we can pay for a neighborhood park or a regional park as long as it's under 25 acres. We also can't build an aquatic center, but we can build a community pool. We can put in a police substation and we can pay for police vehicles, but again, no officers with that. So those are some of the restrictions. We've had a lot of talk about the library. You can still charge a library impact fee, but is very restrictive on what you can use it for. So the library can be no more than 10,000 square feet. And then there's a limit to the dollar amount that you can collect with that. And there's also limitations on how long you have to spend these fees. So once we collect them, we've told the development community that we're going to use these on impact fees. So we have 10 years to spend them. And the clock starts ticking when they pull that permit and we bring in that money. So again, kind of going back to the library is why we had to have it expended in the time amount that we do. So we also have some other caveats that complicate this a little bit more, is each fund goes into each different pot, but we also have development agreements and developer credits that coincide with some of these impact fees. So we have, I think, 80 different development agreements, and some will say, okay, we're going to build you a park, but you have to reimburse us with impact fees, or we're going to get a credit, so we're not going to pay the park impact fee because we donated the park to the city. So that's where we do on the back end. We make sure we track that and we do the accounting for that to make sure that we don't pay more than what the developer said, but that we meet our obligation. So again, this is for infrastructure only, and then every impact fee valley-wide has to be done every 5 years. So this is why we're here today. So it's a process. So there's two different rounds. So there's round one, which is going through the land use assumptions and the IIP. And then there's round two, which is talking about the actual development fees. They go hand in hand. You can't have development fees without the land use assumptions and the IIP. So this is how we expect to grow, the amount of revenue that we're going to collect, where we see the growth patterns happening. So that's one part of it that we proposed back in November. And then the infrastructure improvement plan, which is a hybrid of our capital plan and our developer obligations and reimbursements. Round two is what we're starting today. So we'll go into what we've done so far. So from the land use assumptions in the IIP, we came to council and did a work session in November and talked about, these are what we think our land use assumptions are. This is, which we had an independent firm, Applied Economics, run our land use assumptions. And we consulted with Tischler Bice to help put all of this together. So after we brought this information to you, we went out to the development community. So far we've had 2 stakeholder meetings. We invited, I believe, 1,500 people to come and sit, and we did a presentation much like we're doing today to tell them about, these are the projects we have in here, these are our growth assumptions. If you have any questions, comments, feedback, and they did, and we listened to them. And then we had another impact fee meeting last week. So we brought them back in and listened to their concerns and made sure that we were addressing those and getting those done timely. And some of those I'll talk about when we get a little bit further in here. But I think we were able to satisfy most of their questions. And I think we have some internal discussions on a couple things on what we need to do with those. Tonight, I will be coming back in the regular session to do a public notice or a public hearing for the land use assumptions and IIP. So if anybody from the development community wants to come up and voice their concerns or wants to talk to you guys about it, that would be their time to come up in front of council to do that. So that will be later tonight at the regular session. Then on Monday, March 11th, we are having a special meeting to adopt the land use assumptions in the IIP. So we have to have a land use assumptions and IIP before we can charge development impact fees. So that's why one's before, but they are together, but they are separate. So it's complex. So the development fee adoption process starts today with this meeting, and we're going to tell you what the fees are made up of, what those numbers amount to be, and then answer any of your questions that you have. And then what we'll do is once we are working on the land use assumptions, we finalize those, we'll post our fees on the website. This is where it's a little tricky because they're kind of already posted on the website. It's the same 105-page document for both. It will just be updated with any corrections that we have, and we have been updating that as the directions change or as things have been fine-tuned. So that it's a living, breathing document that will just definitely be updated on the 15th, and we'll publicly notice that we're going to have another public hearing similar to the one we're having tonight. We will have another stakeholder meeting, and we'll reach out to the development community about the fees specifically and answer any of their questions or be available for them. And then Tuesday, we'll have Tuesday, April 16th, we'll have a public hearing. Then we'll have the impact fee adoption set for Tuesday, May 21st. From May 21st, it's 75 days per statute for those fees to go into effect. So the fees that you adopt in May won't go into effect until August. So that was a lot of words, but hopefully that tells you why we're here. So we'll go into each fee specifically, but I wanted to talk about the general fee change for the citywide. So we have two types of fees. We have citywide fees and based on special planning areas. So all of our general fees, which are fire, general government, parks, police, and roads or streets, are increasing. So we do have an increase proposed for these fees. And we have talked to the development community. We've had stakeholder meetings where, like I had said, where we've reached out. I would say that the part where we're that we might have, we've gotten some feedback on is our roads or our streets fee. So it's not that the developers are opposed to paying a streets fee. They just want us to fine tune our project lists and make sure that it's clear and easy to administer. So we're making sure that we're being receptive and listening. So we're going to have an internal discussion on what we're going to do with that. There's a possibility that we might take it out of this impact fee, but not completely remove it. We would just move it down because it's not going to make this adoption timeline and reintroduce that as a standalone impact fee, which since we do not currently charge a street or road fee, we can do. It would just be basically this process all over again with just the streets. So there was some questions from the stakeholder meetings about parks, making sure that our parks that are in our current inventory weren't donated by development. So we vetted that information and made sure that there were no parks that we weren't double charging for anything. We've had some clarification on some of our water projects. And can you think of any others?
That was it.
I think we were able to satisfy most of them. We've gotten a lot of compliments from the development community that we've been very transparent. We put our public notice right on the main part of the website, so it's easy to get to. We send out communication, and anytime there's a change, we try to send out an update. So we are definitely working with the development community.
Holly, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
On roads, what do you mean by roads?
Roads or streets, just to have, it's basically our arterial roads.
So
Structure.
arterials.
Arterials, I think some of the concern or feedback we've had is that we have a hybrid of arterials and non-arterial streets. And I think the development community would like it to be more just arterial roads. Correct me if I'm wrong.
But the developer has to do the half street.
Yes.
Okay, so I don't understand. He's got to pay for the half street. Why is there a fee on top of that? If that's
That I might phone a friend for. Maybe. I'm going to bring up Terry Lowe
Oh,
or
Terry?
Eric
Okay.
Fitzer to answer that question.
Mayor, members of the council. So basically, what we looked at roadways in kind of a couple different caches. That we have areas of the city that the development community may not actually build the roads. There are areas where we have county islands and those types of things that we still need to have a road built. And we looked at other things as well, and that's one of the reasons why we're kind of taking a step back with the road methodology, is we need to come back with a more cohesive type effort on how we look at it. We've looked at different types of options where maybe a developer, based on their transportation impact analysis, builds a portion of a roadway, then we charge the impact fee to build the full roadway, those types of things. So until such time we're able to kind of vet that through the process, that's one of the reasons why we're holding back the roadway fees.
Okay. By okay, I mean, I'll have to digest that. I don't understand totally, so maybe some of the other rest of the council would like to ask a question. Councilman Remley?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm not. You're not the only one confused. Does it refer to the residential street that is running in front of your house that gets built?
Mayor, Councilmember Remley, no. These would be arterial roadways that would serve a larger region or a larger area of the city. It wouldn't be a local roadway in a residential neighborhood. These would be larger outside of that area.
Okay, on the arterial, is this referring to the maintenance that we need to do on that roadway to keep it serviceable during that 10-year window?
Mayor, Councilmember Remley, no. This would be to actually construct.
I'm still confused.
New construction. Eric, give us an example, will you? Think of a road so we can envision what you're talking about.
So 163rd Avenue.
163rd?
163rd Avenue North.
Okay.
We have portions of 163rd Avenue that are adjacent to developments. So Asante, Verdugo, Altamira, which would now Fulton Homes is purchased.
Right.
But we also have areas that are adjacent to a county island where we don't have a development going on and we're not sure if that county island's going to develop. So we have this section of roadway where it's one lane where we still needed to be able to construct because we have developments going north of there that no one's on the hook to construct necessarily. So one of the ideas is we would put that county island piece into an impact fee for the larger area, and therefore we'd be able to construct that portion of roadway to help facilitate traffic in and out.
So Eric, in this case, the developers to the north would be the beneficiaries of that road going through, so they would pay the impact fee to reimburse us doing that.
There would need to be a rational nexus. So there would need to be an area created and those types of things. We've also looked at...
Okay, I can see that.
Yeah, we also looked at regional infrastructure, bridges, interchanges, those types of things that wouldn't be borne by necessarily one development, but would benefit an entire area that would be borne by all developments. So these are the items that we need to scrub out, and that's one of the reasons why we're pulling back the impact fee, or that portion of the impact fee.
Okay, good. All right, that gives me a little idea. Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eric.
So we did a comparison of most cities are going through the same impact fee update process. So not everybody has their proposed impact fees posted online, but we did want to give you a comparison of where Surprise falls in relation to impact fees. And these are all proposed. This doesn't talk about our current impact fees. It's more of a where we're going in everybody else's process. So we do want to make sure that we are development friendly and that we are, as you can see, we are the lowest of our impact fees. And if we do remove the streets component for now, those will go down even more substantially. So while our fees are going up, we are still lower than the majority of our neighbors.
Holly, another question real quick.
Sure.
Because I was looking at this and I was going, wow, okay. And Peoria just did an IIP to justify this?
They're currently going through the process.
To justify these, okay, wow, okay.
So if we take out or remove our streets fee, even if we bring it back in a different form, most cities do charge a street fee or an arterial street fee. I would say Ben he does these all over the country, and they are very common.
Really? Is that true?
Very common, yes.
Okay. I mean, $6,400 in almost 6,500 in Peoria.
Just for the street fee.
And
That's per house.
Yes, and there's a Peoria's broken up into specific regions. So I pulled their west of the Agua Fria, which is close as I could get to Surprise and still being in Peoria. So they do have a south of Bell that's smaller, but they do have one that's larger. So I tried to get the middle of the road for a comparison. But yes, they have a large street fee.
Interesting.
So
Okay.
we went to a side note, but we went to a conference and we talked to people in Florida, and some of Florida's street fees are like up to $10,000, and California's can be $20,000 to $30,000. So yeah, it's roads are expensive. So we also broke down, I provided a map for each of you just so you could see, because on the screen it's sometimes small. But when we talk about some of our service areas, we're talking about a citywide fee. So that would be assessed in all of our spas or special planning areas. We call them spas and Surprise. Typically, when it's citywide, it would be anybody that pulls its permit if they're in Surprise city limits. Otherwise, there's some water and wastewater that are specific to special planning area 1 or 2 or 3. So just a breakdown of the map, just a visual of where you could see. We are currently residing in Spa 1. In case you were wondering. So I'm going to kick it over to Ben on how he calculated all the information we gave him and what our fees came out to be.
Thank you.
Clicker.
All right, Mayor, Council. So we're going to start with the Parks and Rec fee. So this one is a fee that will be charged citywide. We have 4 components. So we have land, amenities, and facilities, which are all using an incremental expansion methodology, which just says this is our existing level of service. We want to maintain this going forward. So the fee is based on that. The 4th component is it's actually the grandfathered fee. So that is related to some debt that is no longer allowed under the revised act. And that would be the Aquatic Center and
The park, some of this, the big stadium parks, the cost of the Surprise Aquatic Center and this complex.
Right. So there's about $735,000 worth of debt related to that outstanding. So this just says keep charging that fee that you've been charging to retire that debt. Once you have retired that, then the fee goes away. So once you hit that $735,000 mark, the fee just goes away. So if you maintain your current level of service, we're saying that, over the next 10 years, you would need 88 additional acres of park land and improvements or amenities. And so it would cost about $6.7 million to acquire that land, and it would cost about $17.5 million to make improvements to that land or those amenities needed. The facilities component, because you can only include 3,000 square feet of each facility, we can't include everything that you have. So I think you actually needed 30,000 additional square feet over 10,000 or over the next 10 years. But since we can only use a portion of it, it shows demand of only 4,500 square feet. So that would generate about $800,000 in fee revenue. All right, so this next one, this just shows each component, so what's driving the fee. So you can see that, your existing park land has a value of about $23.5 million. Your amenities, about $61 million. The rec facility is about $2.8, and then you have about $8.2 million in outstanding obligations. So that is going to be mostly developer credits. And so we're offsetting that because you can't say that it's completely ours if you haven't paid for it yet. So that's just the offset to make sure we're not overcharging development. So once you add all that up together, you get a net cost of about $79 million. And when you allocate that to all existing development, the park EDUs, that comes out to a little over $1,400 per EDU. You add in the cost of the report, so you can have development pay back the report. And then you subtract out the excess construction tax offset. And so, for every EDU, you should charge, $1,199 for park fees. So that when you add it to the grandfathered fee, we're looking at, a little under $2,000 per EDU. So an EDU in this case is a single family dwelling. If you're in charge of multifamily, they're not quite an EDU. It's all based on, persons per housing unit. So the multifamily fee would be a little bit less. Any questions with parks?
Yeah, I had a question on the EDUs. There were like 2 or 3 different numbers of EDUs throughout the study.
Correct.
Why is that?
So with parks, we want to treat that differently than we would treat police or fire, because non-residential development is going to have a different demand for park services than they will for police or fire. Non-residential development workers basically aren't going to use your park system as much as they might potentially use your police or fire system. So we say that more of the share of park services will be borne by residential development. So that's why there's a difference in EDUs. You'll see more EDUs when we go to fire, for example, has about 66,000 existing EDUs, and that's just because they take more of the share. And so when you do that conversion to say, all right, well, if this is a single family units demand, we want to have what's the equivalent demand from non-residential development, and based on the factors that we use for police and fire, so jobs or trip generation, a non-residential development is going to have closer to 1 EDU, whereas in parks, the demand isn't there to justify having more EDUs on the non-residential side. So that's the real difference. Is just there's not as much demand.
Okay, so how many dwelling units are in Surprise?
Off the top of my head, I'm not sure, but it is in this. Let's see, is it way in the back?
Was it 52,000?
Single family was 67.7.
67.7?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or I'm sorry, 49.1. We're projecting it's going to bump up to 67.
So 49.1 is right?
In the entire city, it looks like about almost 55,000 units.
So about 55, okay.
Oh, wait, sorry, that's just spot one. Yeah, 57.6
57.6 currently.
currently.
And that includes mobile homes, stick-built apartments, and apartments. Okay.
Correct.
Okay. All right. That was I was around, in my mind, I was around 55,000, but then I saw these other numbers now. Whoa, wait a minute. Okay, so 56 or
Right,
57,
and then
57.
just think that, because it's all based on a single-family dwelling unit as your EDU, because multifamily and mobile homes have a lower occupancy rate, they don't count as one full EDU.
Right,
so
right.
that's why.
That makes sense.
Exactly.
And that's why you use that multiple in there, right?
Exactly.
To kind of even it out. Like
Right, we
who
want to
uses
treat
it
everyone
more.
the same.
Right.
Councilman Remley, did you have a question? Because did you have okay.
Yes. On the first, back one slide. Before proposed park fees, you had the 10-year demand for 88 acres. 6.7 million to acquire 88 acres. What price are you using per acre to acquire land?
100,000.
It's roughly $190,000 to $100,000 based on our current.
Not even $100,000. And are we talking about today's cost or future cost? Is this a present value or a future value?
So that's the value that's being used in your existing CIP. Now, if we think that the value or the cost to acquire land is going to go up dramatically, maybe we say, all right, well, any land that we acquire, in the next, 2 or 3 years might be 100,000, but maybe beyond that, maybe it's 125,000 an acre.
Right?
And, this is all just based on your existing capital improvement plan.
Right. So we're saying Over the next 10 years, we're going to acquire 88 acres at a total of $6.7 million.
Right.
Maybe we're acquiring them 10 years from now, okay? Not today. So 10 years from now, 88 acres at 6.7 million does not sound very realistic to me.
Councilman Remley, we can definitely go back and look at those numbers and work with our CIP group and see if we can add a different inflationary cost in there and get back with our consultants and look
Right,
at that
because
fee
the
again.
numbers I've been seeing is like $130,000 an acre. Okay, not 80,000 an acre, which is about what you have here. Okay.
Part of that is going to be the that 8 million, the outstanding obligations. That's offsetting some of that cost. So it's pulling down.
That's where I got confused because I see that number, 6.8 million, and then I see another one that says parkland costs of 23.5 million. What are we doing? They don't. One confuses me with the other one.
The 23.5 is our existing parks, right?
Correct.
And the
Oh, okay.
okay, and then what they're talking about is projected parks. And I can see if we look out north, Councilman Remley, I can see where the land's going to be a lot cheaper way out north. You build a park near city center, it's going to cost you more money, probably. Okay, but out where Rancho Mercado is and all that, that could be cheaper because it's.
Well,
out,
I would agree with you if we
Yeah.
bought it today.
Yeah.
But I would shudder to guess in Asante how much they would want for a couple
Maybe-
acres of their land. We just did a deal over there.
Yeah, maybe just take a look at that and scrub it and see if that's reasonable. You know,
Absolutely.
it's a good point.
Yeah.
Point.
Councilman Duffy,
No, he just asked.
you got it? Okay.
All right. And another thing to remember is because you have to do this every 5 years, if the costs are noticeably higher in 3 or 4 years, well, you're starting the adoption process or you're starting the update process anyway. So you can make sure that in that 5-year update that you go ahead and bring those costs up.
Yep.
Right. Thank you, Mayor. Right, but at the same time, I would hate to see where we flubbed it today. We get to fix it tomorrow, and we get some of these dramatic changes like I'm seeing. I mean, some of our impact fees are literally doubling, even more than what they were before. Now, maybe that's because we didn't look at them for a long time, but maybe it's also because we didn't figure it out right the first time. So I'm just asking questions.
Yeah. No, it's a good point, Ken.
Councilmember Mayor, your points are very valid, and we definitely want your feedback. And we will work with our CIP group, and we'll work with the department directors and make sure that that's a viable cost for the land. And if we can adjust that, it will. It may not affect the impact fees, but we want to make sure that our project scopes are correct and that we're accounting for inflationary dollars. So those are great points.
There was one other thing that I saw in here, and it was a big decrease in the cost of fire and fire services. Our fire services haven't been going down in cost, and I would say they've probably been going up in cost greater than the percentage increase in the number of building units we have and stuff like that. So I'm troubled because I know what we're going to be spending on facilities. I'm troubled with the idea that, fire protection doesn't cost us that much. And just before I came down here, I saw El Mirage fire truck going down the road to answer one of our calls. So,
We'll get into fire right now.
Okay, let's get into it.
All right, so with fire, we are looking at a citywide service area. So we have 5 components with this, apparatus, facilities, land. Those are all incremental. So we say, whatever we have today, we want to maintain that going forward. There is the Evidence and Readiness Center, or the fire share of that. And then there's some outstanding debt So over the next 10 years, to maintain your current level of service, you would need to acquire 17 additional apparatus at a cost of about $6.8 million. You would need 36,000 additional square feet of facilities at a cost of almost 18 million, 9 additional acres of land at a cost of 1.6 million, and then the fire share of the Evidence and Readiness Center is $1.1 million. So part of the reason, and thank you for bringing this up, for the decrease in the fire fee is that you have a grandfathered fee today. That is not in compliance with the revised statutes. And so, we advised staff that that should be removed because it's, with the parks fee, you're still collecting because it's something that's not eligible anymore, and you don't have anything else like it. So you can keep generating, you can keep charging that grandfathered fee because you're not double dipping. But with the fire fee, if you kept charging the grandfathered fee and you had the new one, there could be some overlap. And so to reduce the chance of developers challenging the fees, we suggested to remove that grandfathered fee, and that's the biggest reason that the fire fee is decreasing. And we're hearing this all across the valley that public safety costs are increasing, and a lot of cities their fire fees are increasing, and with this, if you compare your non-grandfathered fee currently to this fee, you do see a slight increase, but really it's driven by that removal of the grandfathered fee.
And Mayor Hall, Councilmember Remley, once we update our study in the next couple years, since we're building 2 additional fire stations, will help our current level of service. Where we have 304, where that fire station costs us about $300,000 because it's a mobile unit, that didn't help our current level of service. So our old fees were structured in a way where it was capital based, where it was based on the project component. And since the methodology now is the level of service, it's also changing the way that fee is calculated. So once those bond projects come on board and we update the study, that fire fee should go up. I couldn't imagine it not going up with the addition of 2 high dollar amount fire stations. So that will help increase the fee for the following fire stations where we need to build. And then once we pay off our existing debt, that will also help increase the fee for further studies coming forward.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor Winters.
Thank you, Mayor. On your apparatus components, you are including our ambulances too, aren't you, on that? Okay, good. Thank you.
All right, so this shows each component. So as Holly was mentioning, if 304 existed in its final form today, that fire facility cost wouldn't be $42 million. It would be closer to $50 million. And so your fee would be higher. So in the next update, if you have these 2 stations, you have a few more apparatus, you don't have this debt sitting out there, then all those numbers go up, that outstanding obligation goes away, and your fee amount goes up. And really, the only way to increase the level of service is to add those additional stations.
And then Holly, another question. It goes from one bucket to another then, huh? In other words, it comes in, the fire fee would come in, impact fee would come in from the developer, and it would pay down the bond.
Mayor Hall, essentially, it will pay down the debt first, and it could potentially pay down the bond as well.
Yes. Okay. Because remember, the Station 308 is bond financed.
Yes.
Okay. So, but there's going to be developer fees that will contribute to that, so that should reduce the bond obligation, right?
Mayor Hall, yes, theoretically, we do have a credit for the bond built into this fee. So while we're paying for bond fees, and we also can take the impact fees and pay off the bond. So it's really a strategy of how we plan to move forward, but it's definitely a possibility on how we do it. Or we can take the impact fees and pay for a future station. So it's really just how we want to move forward.
Okay.
All right. So for each fire EDU, we're going to charge $789. So the fire fee for a single family dwelling would be $789. All right. Any questions on fire? All right. Next up, we have police. Again, a citywide service area. We have 3 incremental components, so vehicles, equipment, and stations. So we want to maintain the existing level of service going forward. And then the Evidence and Readiness Center, which is plan-based. So this will just represent the police share of that facility. So over the next 10 years, you would need to acquire about 30 additional vehicles at a cost of about $2 million, 17,000 additional square feet of stations at a cost of about $6.3 million. And then your fee revenue would generate about $1.1 million to go towards the police share of the Evidence and Readiness Center. So this is each component cost. Again, just like the other ones, we're saying this is the replacement cost of your existing, facilities, land, vehicles, and we add in the outstanding fund balance. So this one does have a positive balance, unlike parks and fire, which had a negative balance because of the outstanding obligations. So we add in the positive balance of that to get a police cost of about $31 million. Divide that by the EDUs, add in the report cost, subtract out the excess construction sales tax. So every single family unit or EDU should be charged $392 for the police fee. Any questions on police? All right, so street.
So we'll talk about how we originally proposed to calculate the street fee, and then just to keep in mind that there's a good possibility after we make an internal decision that we might bring this forward in a different form and remove it from this study. But we will keep you posted on that.
Do you want to go through it?
No.
Good.
Thank you.
All right, so water. With this, we're looking at 3 service areas, so spas 1, 2, and 3. We're looking at wells, treatment, pump stations, storage tanks, water lines, and land. So with this, we're saying over the next 10 years, you'd grow by 12,800 EDUs. This one excludes the private water company.
Correct. If how Surprise is laid out, we have water service areas that are generated by Surprise, but you also have EBCOR and you have Beardsley Water. And if they're outside of our water service area, then those developments would not be assessed an impact fee.
So we're saying that, based on what you have in the ground now, what's planned, outstanding obligations, you would generate about $45.7 million in revenue over the next 10 years. And so some of that would go towards, repaying essentially what you owe developers for what they've already constructed. It may put in a new well. So it's sort of a mix on the types of projects with this. But you do have a fee for each spa based on the existing infrastructure that's in that service area. They all use the same, average day demand. So we're saying that, all single family units, or the average single family unit in Surprise is going to use 393 gallons, per unit. So that is, how we're saying, this is your actual demand. We multiply that by the cost per gallon, which part of the reason this is a 105-page document is the utility section, because we show all the demand factors. We show, your existing inventory, the unit costs. So we could get into that. But essentially what it's saying is that, each spa has a slightly different cost factor, but they're all going to essentially generate the same amount of demand per EDU. So you multiply those, add in the study cost, subtract out the construction sales tax, and so you have a range of about $3,300 to $3,700 per EDU, depending on where the development happens. Any questions on water?
Councilman Sanders.
This is not really on water, but it's more kind of based on the debt that we had talked about. So one of the examples you gave was the park debt that we have outstanding. And that fees go to retire that debt, right? So just so I have it right, if this report comes out, just for round numbers, we can charge a fee of, say, $10. But that debt that's out there calls for, say, a $2 payment. Is that 10.8 or is that 10.10 and then the 2 gets collected? You see what I mean? Like, do we have to hit the 10 or are we collecting essentially 2 fees, $12 total?
Councilman Sanders, if I'm understanding your question correctly, is if we bring in $10 fee is what we're charging, and then the $2 fee essentially goes to pay debt. The $2 fee is basically taken out and paid towards the debt. So we only have $8 that we're collecting that's spendable. So $2 goes towards debt, and then the $8 is what we could actually spend.
And then when that debt is retired, then we take it back up to 10, and then the 10 goes to go forward.
Unfortunately, no. So in the case of parks, once the grandfathered fee is taken out, our fee goes down to 8. So we basically take that $2 in your scenario and just pay off the debt with that $2. So we're only generating $8 in new fees.
Okay. And as far as the debt that's out, that is older debt. And so have we looked at refinancing that? I mean, where do we stand as far as our outstanding
Councilman
debt?
Sanders, that's a great question. That is refinanced debt. The original debt from the parks component was brought in 2000 is when we did the debt, but we did a debt refinancing, I believe in 2015, because we could get a lower interest rate and we could save money on that. So we do try to look at our debts, try to reconsolidate, try to get the best possible interest rate we can for the taxpayers and make sure that we are being responsible with our money, but also paying off the debt that we have at the cheapest cost that we can.
Great. Thank you.
Good point.
All right, any other questions before we move on to water resource? All right, so with water resources, we're saying that over the next 10 years, based on the increase in demand, you would generate about $38 million towards water resources. So this is mainly the acquisition of water rights. That's what's driving this, and it's the cost to acquire additional water. And with this, if a developer came, when they came in to pull their permit, if they said, "Hey, we have our own water rights for this," then they just wouldn't pay this fee because they're coming to the table with their own water. So this fee is one that, depending on what, each developer does, could go away for them. So if there are any really technical questions, Terry's going to be the best one to answer this. Otherwise, each EDU would pay, about $3,000 for a water resource.
But and I think to Terry's point, it matches our policy and our trying to bring a 20-year water supply, correct? And making sure that they're in compliance. If they bring it, then they wouldn't pay the fee. But if they come in without their assured water supply, that's when they would pay that impact fee for us to go out and find water in their behalf to make sure that they have water for the next 20 years.
I think Holly, one of the most interesting, compelling numbers of this whole screen to me is the water demand and then the recovery through the recharge and reclaim, 60%. So it comes down to the average of 234 after you start with 393. But when you figure in the recharge and the wastewater, et cetera, okay? And we have a large wastewater area. We got a small water area. We got a large wastewater area. So all of EPCOR is we handle the wastewater, right?
Mayor Hall, that's correct.
Yeah. So that's a big deal. Anyway.
All right, so with wastewater, we're looking at 2 service areas, SPA 1 and 2. Last time we did have SPA 3 in there, but the development agreement essentially says, hey, this is, how we're going to handle repayment. And this is, essentially everything that's going to develop in that area over the next 10 years is likely going to be part of that development agreement. So they wouldn't pay a fee anyway. And so we removed SPA 3 from the IIP. So that's the big change between last time and this time. Still looking at the same components. So we have the reclamation facilities, the lines, the recharge basins, and then the lift and booster stations. So we're saying over the next 10 years, you would have an increase of about 30,000 EDUs, which goes to your point that you have a small water service area, but a very large wastewater service area. And so this would generate about $75 million in fee revenue over the next 10 years. Similar to water, you get a cost per
Can I
gallon.
ask a question too?
Sure.
Maybe Terry can answer this. I hate to put you on the spot on this, Terry, but isn't there a wastewater plant that is mothballed in SPA 3?
Mayor, members of council, that is correct, and that's what Ben was referring to, that the plant in SPA 3 currently, it's actually, as of December, it's up in operation. It's currently not within our inventory. We are not operating it.
So as December, they got it back operating.
It's back operating, correct, under low flow condition, but it is back
And that
operating.
was all based on buying agreements of the developers out there.
The development group in SPA 3 is the one that constructed it, and then the economy went down. It was mothballed. Development is back. The Austin Ranch development is primarily the ones delivering wastewater to that facility. That is in the Beardsley Water District. But you're correct. It was mothballed. It's back up and running right now, but it is not. We are not currently operating it per development agreement. That is the facility in the area, and it will be it's got a significant capacity and be there for some time. We will take over operation at per development agreement at a 10% of capacity flow. We are working towards actually doing that potentially a little bit sooner.
It's 10%.
That's correct. That's by development agreement. We're in the business. They are not. We are hoping to maybe take it over a little bit sooner, all deal points considered. So,
Okay, thank you, Terry.
thank you.
All right, so again, we're just looking at a cost per gallon of capacity. So looking at existing infrastructure to come up with that cost per gallon. We multiply that by the average day flows per EDU. Again, add in the report cost, take out the construction sales tax. So we're looking at a little under $2,500 in SPA 1 and $2,750 in SPA 2 for each single family development. So that's essentially a 3/4 inch meter. And then there's just a capacity ratio. So as your meter size increases, the fee increases proportionately.
And then from there, we have our next steps. So tonight, we will come forward with a public hearing to see if there's any public that wanted to give their concerns or congratulations or however they want to talk to us about our impact fees and our IIP. So that will be a public hearing tonight at the regular council meeting. Then on March 11th is when we have our special meeting to adopt the land use assumptions in the IIP. And then we will have another stakeholder meeting. And then we'll come forward with another public hearing on this fees we presented to you specifically for the public on April 16th, and then we hope to do a final adoption May 21st, and these fees would go into effect in August.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. It's very complicated to follow the bouncing ball, but you guys have really done a good job, and I appreciate it. And I guess I don't have anything better to do, but I read it, okay? And it's really a good document, and it's well thought through. And I just and I want to thank you, Holly and Andrea, for for guiding us through and keeping it as simple as possible. I think it's going to take time for us to digest some of this, and we are always available for questions, right?
Absolutely.
And so I know Councilman Remley's going to have some for sure.
Yeah.
So, okay. All right. Is there any other questions, you guys?
Yeah.
Oh, Councilman Judd.
So yeah, I read it too. It was a great weekend read, and I did appreciate. There's a lot of plain language in there though, so it wasn't engineered up. It was really easy to understand. It was just a matter of concentrating for that long. So one of the things that came up quite a bit in the report was the excess construction tax that we collect, and then that was an offset for the development fees. So how does the excess construction tax work, and is it redundant? Is it something we can get rid of if we have the fees, or is it broader than that? Can you just explain to me how it works?
You want to take it or want me to?
Yeah, so the revised statutes specifically say that if your construction excise tax is higher than the general sales tax rate, then you have to dedicate that overage to capital infrastructure. And so what we're doing is saying, hey, because you charge a higher construction sales tax than your general sales tax rate, we're saying that this is our reduction. We want to make sure that because technically the home buyer is paying that construction sales tax through the price of their home, so they're generating revenue that's going to be used towards capital improvements, that we do a credit for that because we're also charging them an impact fee. So we don't want to double charge them.
So it is fairly redundant, and it's homeowners buying a house and business owners buying a building that pay that construction tax?
Councilmember Judd, yes, whenever you purchase or finally close on your house or your building, there's that sales tax that you're going to pay at the end of your sale. Since we charge 3.7% construction and our sales tax rate is 2.2, we take the difference because any of our construction sales tax money goes into our general capital, which is also how we would fund other capital projects. So to make sure that we're not double charging the development community, that's why you see that tax reduction in every single line item.
Okay, and then we probably have more freedom in how we spend that money than we would if we just set up as a development impact fee specifically?
Yes, general capital, we can spend it on capital infrastructure how we need to. We can spend it on asset replacement, vehicle replacement, buildings of any site. We can build a park, a pool, a fire station with that. Impact fees, fire, you can only use it for fire.
Okay.
Parks, you can only use it for parks. So it's more broad on what we can use it on.
All right. And then for single family homes, we don't differentiate the size. If someone's buying a 1,000 square foot home, they're going to pay the same fees as the guy buying a 4,500 square foot home?
Councilmember Judd, where it would differ is on the water component. So on the water side, they would pay a different size meter. So if it's a 3/4 meter, a 1-inch meter, or a 2-inch meter, that's where the fee would change. But on the general side where parks and roadways are, no, the size of your home doesn't matter. It's an equivalent dwelling unit.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Good questions, Councilman Judd. Is there anything else? If not, I'll ask for an adjournment of this work session.
Don't we have one more item?
Oh, we got another item. Oh, geez, that's right.
So you're not getting
I was so involved in this. We have another item. No, that's the regular.
Next.
Regular meeting.
So the next item is a presentation and discussion pertaining to the city's Census 2020 outreach plan.
I see you, Mayor. You're trying to get out of this. All right.
Sorry, Diane.
We do have a while before Census 2020 gets here, so I understand. The reason why we wanted to get ahead of you so early is because there are conversations out there happening about how important it is that when we get to April 1st, 2020 on the census, that we want people to participate. So tonight we're going to talk about some background to educate people on why it's important, what the timeline is to get us to Census Day 2020, and then share some of our outreach methods and how we're educating the public on the process. Find a little remote thing. Oh,
it's over there.
All right. So for some background, of course, it's federal law that everyone in the United States take a census survey every 10 years. And that's been the case since the year 1790. It provides us some accurate population count across our country and very important for folks to know where you physically are April 1st, 2020 is the survey that you complete. I know we have a lot of part-time residents, so that question comes up when we start doing this every single year. Of course, our participation ensures that we have a true population count, and if you look at the surprise numbers back in Census 2000, there were fewer than 3,100 people living in Surprise. Wow, can you believe that? Census 2010, we had just under 118,000 people counted. Our participation rate in the census that year was 70%, which was one of the higher ones that we saw across Maricopa County. Of course, we're going to try better in 2020. We want to get those numbers up. And then 2017 estimates show for our population around 134,000 right now. Of course, if you look at the MAG numbers, they have us at about 133,000 right now. So that was of July 2018. So those are the most updated that we have. So what's new for 2020? For the first time ever, the U.S. Census will be available online, by phone, or by mail. So if you take a look at the screen, you can see how that process is going to break down. People first will receive a postcard in the mail. They'll have their own personal identification number to be able to take the census online. And then the residents can also call to take the survey. And then paper surveys will then be mailed to those that did not participate earlier on through either the online form or by phone. Also, a quick mention that the surveys this year will be available in 12 non-English languages, and there will be survey assistance options for those that have vision or hearing impairments. The importance of the census. Yeah, well, it's all about the almighty dollar at the end of things. It's the information that helps us to determine how $675 billion in federal funding is dispersed across the country on an annual basis. The money here helps to build new infrastructure in the areas of transportation, in schools, public safety programs. And here in Arizona, every person counted is worth nearly $2,000 in terms of federal funding support. An accurate population count strengthens our voice in the nation's capital. And we're looking at census projections will show Arizona is likely to gain a 10th congressional seat once Census 2020 numbers are combined. If there's a significant population shift in any of the districts, that would trigger something called redistricting in the year 2021. We did experience that in 2011. I'm sure Mayor Hall remembers that. It was just like yesterday, right? So we just want to make sure that we have equal representation among the districts out there. So that's the purpose of that. And then finally, it assists in our planning efforts. If we know what our growth looks like, we're able to plan better in the future. Taking a look at that census timeline. So Census 2020 planning up till April 1st. Right now we have our marketing communications team has already started some of that outreach. Lloyd Abrams, our community development assistant director, and Mr. Census 2020, we like to refer him as, we've already been meeting with the MAG team members. Yeah, sorry, Lloyd. We've already been meeting with MAG on some of the communications outreach to make sure that we all have that regional buy-in. And then here locally, you saw the latest Progress magazine. We already have a first blush article out there reminding residents that census is coming and why it's important to participate. We're going to work with our partners with Dysart and the Chamber to help spread the word among the business community and throughout the school districts. You know, kids like to shame parents, and that'll be a good way to get the parents out there to participate in the survey if the kids say, well, I think you're supposed to. And then we've also had 3 meetings with the regional census team, again, at MAG. And as you can see, by the time the numbers get to the president, December 31st of 2020, that's when we know what our true count is at that point. So it's quite a bit of a process. And you can see there when they'll be mailing things out and showing up door to door for those that do not participate. And our outreach methods. So how are we going to communicate? Any way possible. We'll stand on the balconies of City Hall and shout to people, whatever works. Taking a look at this, we'll have a city census website that's surprise-centric. We are part of a regional ad buy because we are a member of the Maricopa Association of Governments. That's about a $27,000 cost for our buy in an overall anywhere from a $1 to a $1.5 million regional ad buy among all MAG members. But we, of course, want to localize and talk to our residents so they know how important it is to rely here at home. So these are all the various ways, anything that we can possibly do, we're going to make sure that we get that message out there. So with that, if you have any questions and you know, the fact that I color coordinated with our PowerPoint tonight, I'm pretty proud of that. That was outstanding. So I'll take the easy ones, and Lloyd's back here for the hard ones if you have
It's
any.
not color coordinated, so yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Councilman Sanders.
Thank you, Mayor. You had talked about federal funding. It comes out to about just under $2,000 per person, right? But like on a state level, on a city level, I think we just, on a consensus item, I believe it was last meeting, there were lottery funds, I think, that had attributed to based on our population. Do you know can you just name a couple other items off the top of your head that we would benefit from financially with an updated census?
The updated census,
Well, I guess it's going after a bigger population, I guess.
so there are different funding sources that help get money. So the state shared revenue dollars are tied to our population numbers. So maybe that's what you're referring to. But the overall, that $2,000 number, 1979, I think it is, that helps for a variety of things. It is some social service support, but it's also things like public infrastructure, road projects, public safety programs, and a certain dollar amount is allocated per person to help fund those types of opportunities in cities as well. Does that answer your question, Lloyd? Did I miss anything? Okay.
Okay. Councilman Judd.
So the 70% return rate we had last time, or response rate we had last time, do we get funding for the full number of people they calculate us to have, or is it actual people who responded to the survey that we get money for?
It's the actual people count. So however many people, so if a family of four completed a survey, that's 4 people, but it was 70% of overall households that were counted.
Okay, so we didn't just get 70% of the funds.
No.
We had 70%
70% participation.
return rate, and then we just extrapolated from there to come up with the actual number. Okay.
And then I think when they go back out, if that's just the participate, I mean, that number would go higher when they go back out, Lloyd, for the follow-up. Correct. So that would increase the total count overall.
Okay.
Okay, Lloyd, get back up and sit back down. No, I'm just kidding.
We're the dynamic duo.
Is there anybody else have anything? If not, that's the end of this work session. There's no third item, right, Sherry? Okay.
He actually did color coordinate. I take it back. I mean, the time matches too.
I know.
Matches the presentation.
Yeah, looks
Make a
good.
motion to end the workshop.
I will second it.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.